So it struck me then that even though we have all these policies and issues, people continue to be confused and misled by certain people. In that case, some minor politicians. And in many ways, that is exactly what is happening right now to our SMEs. So if we get these three things right, we're ensuring that your products are in demand to begin with. There's a lot of products and services out there that are essentially just hype. You should look beyond that and look at exactly what you're delivering. Actually, I want to take us back a little bit to the backstory.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. So we talk to business leaders in Asia. So today I have someone that I've known for many years, and he was on my list to invite for a long time as well. But finally, we actually get to invite him, and he took the time to be with us today. So I'll do a quick introduction. Datuk William Ng has been a champion of SMEs for over 20 years, and he was part of many his media companies previously, and we'll talk a bit about that as well. His roles as a publisher, editor, committee chair, council member, and as a voice for SMEs. So today you'll see him in the papers, on media a lot, talking about SMEs. Wherever someone has something to ask about SMEs, he's the person to ask, especially here in Malaysia. So today he's the National President of Small and Medium Enterprises Association, or SAMENTA, Malaysia's oldest and largest association for SMEs. And he's also the chairman and champion of the Retail and F&B and a board member of the Malaysian Alliance of Corporate Directors, a founding member of the Global Network of Directors Institutes. So William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. I just realized how long we have known each other. Quite a long time, really.
Yes, I remember visiting your office in PJ last time. And then at that time, you had like multiple media companies, right?
We still have a number of media products, yes. We still publish magazines. But of course, a lot of these titles are now fully online. Although recently we have brought back again in print the SME magazine to try again to penetrate markets where the preference for physical copy of the magazine is still there and it's working. So we're still doing quite well with the media business is concerned.
Oh, and maybe before we talk about SMEs today, maybe tell us a bit about your career, how you went from entrepreneur until your role today.
Well, I started the business at a relatively young age. I think I was 24 when I started my first business, which was actually in the exhibition business. So we organize exhibitions in places like Mid Valley, KLCC, and other states, etc. Then of course, we were hit quite badly by SARS back in 2003, if I recall correctly. At that point, I think we decided to pivot towards doing other things. And one of the things that we went into, of course, was to publish magazines. Because at the point, of course, magazines were still in demand. It is less so today. And since then, of course, the business has grown, thankfully. So much so that I think during the pandemic in the year 2021, we were quite grateful. We were able to list our company, the exhibition business as well as the media business in Singapore, in SGX, as Audience Analytics Limited. I think we're one of the very few Malaysian-based companies that has successfully done so.
And today, what brands are under that company?
We continue to have the SME magazine, so that's something that I continue to be very passionate about. We don't make a lot of money from the magazine, but it's something that I feel the country needed and still need. Then we have the HR Asia magazine, which is now distributed across 15 markets across Asia. So if you go to Hong Kong, go to Korea, you'll find the magazine there as well. We have Capital Asia, so there's a Chinese financial publication. And purely online portals, we have Energy Asia, we have Logistics Asia, we have CXP, and about 7 or 8 other titles are online. So by sheer number of titles, we're probably one of the largest B2B media company, not just in Malaysia, but probably in the region.
So it is mostly online now?
I would say 2/3 of titles are now fully online. 1/3 is both online and print.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on the media industry today? Like you started from magazines back in the day, and now it's online, and then we have video, things like that. Do you see yourself? I remember you told me about emails last time. Do you see?
It was many years ago.
Yeah.
We still do that. One of the things that we did right before the pandemic, I think, is in the year 2019. We decided at point to fully migrate Of course, now we are back in print, but at the point we decided to fully migrate away from print into online right before the pandemic. And we were quite fortunate because that sort of saved us during the pandemic because the cost of printing were totally eliminated even before the pandemic. And I think that is a trend to go. I think there's print will be difficult moving forward, but essentially what we do in print and what we do online is still the same. It's still content generation.
Okay, so now today, so you're involved in SAMENTA. So how do you get involved in SAMENTA?
I've always been a passionate, I think, I would like to think at least, about helping and serving the SMEs. Having been an SME for most of my life myself, as you have heard just now, started literally from zero to getting listed. So when I was asked by, at a point, the president of SAMENTA, Datuk to join SAMENTA back in, I think, 2016 or 2017, I had a long thought, and I thought, if I can contribute in some way to helping other SMEs to go through their challenges and to be more successful, then it would be a chance that I should take. And therefore, I joined SAMENTA at the point. And Datuk at that point were very kind to appoint me to be to chair their policy and government relations committee. And of course, since then, I stood subsequently to be president of the association, and I was elected as the 6th national president of SAMENTA in its 39 years history.
Yeah. And what is your role nowadays? I see you attending a lot of events, you're in media a lot, so what is the role that you play?
Well, to begin with, SAMENTA is the oldest and largest association for SMEs in the country. We were formed 38 years ago. Many of our members come from different parts of the country. We're very much manufacturing skilled. Up to about a quarter of our businesses are manufacturers. This is much higher than the national average of about 6 to 7% SMEs in the manufacturing sector. And because of that, there's a lot of challenges that many of our members as SMEs in general faces. And I thought, therefore, by being part of the association, we have a role to ensure that what we want as SMEs are heard by the government, hence all these events that you see. Yeah.
And you sort of represent the entire group of SMEs. And
we obviously our members are not all the SMEs, but from where we stand, we would like to think that we are probably the loudest voice right now for the SMEs in general. I want to take us back a little bit to the backstory, because you asked me why I joined SAMENTA, and this came to my mind. I grew up in a new village. To a very ordinary family.
Where is it?
Somewhere in Selangor.
Okay.
And very proud of that. But growing up in a small new village, sort of helped me to understand that there are many people in the country who are disadvantaged. Not because of anything else, but simply because of knowledge and literacy. I remember as a young boy, we had this unknown people, they just come in. I think there were some small-time politicians at the point, came to our house and told my father, hey, look, your house will have to be surrendered back to the government because you don't have a land title. You are basically squatting on this land that belongs to the government. So we give you about 3 months' time at most. You have to, just pack and find somewhere else and leave because the government will want this land back. If you need any help, you let us know. Otherwise, you have to leave. And we all panicked because at the point, of course, my parents were not very well educated, and we didn't know what to do. But fortunately for us, someone else came and told us, look, that is not all true. The government has approved what they call a temporary occupancy license, and all you have to do is go to the nearest district office. Pay, I think at a point 10 ringgit or something like that, and you could continue to stay in a new village that your house and everything is there. So it struck me then that even though we have all these policies and issues, people continue to be confused and misled by certain people, in that case, some minor politicians. And in many ways, that is exactly what is happening right now to our SMEs. We continue to meet government agencies to tell us, look, we have all these policies for your SMEs, we have all this financing available, we have all this help and grant and services and facilitation that we have made available to SMEs. Why you're not taking it up? You cannot be saying the government is not doing anything when we have done everything else and you are not taking it up. And then I'm constantly reminded because of how I grew up that the issue here is not about whether you make it available or not. There are plenty of SMEs out there who could be illiterate, who could be just running a small kiosk, with a wife and perhaps the children helping during the weekend, and they don't understand better. They may not understand all these policies that you may have in place, and in many ways, these people are disadvantaged. They are not participating in the economic growth of the country. So what do we do? Who are going and to help these people? We see politicians, of course, helping people in their kawasan, predominantly people, their voters and so on. And in some way, the SMEs, because their businesses are not seen as people that need immediate help, because they may not be classified as B40, although they are still struggling on a day-to-day basis, trying to make ends meet. So we feel that there is a room for an association, for someone to continue to voice out for these people who are where they are, very often not even by choice. Because a lot of people think that, you become an entrepreneur by choice. You become a startup, you raise funds, you go to VC, you go to angel investors, and you make millions, and you connect yourself, and you grow bigger, and you become a unicorn. And that is the mindset of people when it comes to businesses, to startups and SMEs. But the bulk of the SMEs in the country are not even that. They're simply SME because they have no other choice. They may have lost their job, they may not have known better, and therefore they end up doing small businesses and trying to survive. And these are the people that we really need to help and continue to need the help.
Yeah, I like your point. I love your passion for the small business. My grandmother used to run a sundry shop, a grocery shop. And it's like you said, there's no choice because they didn't finish high school. So it's like you didn't finish high school, you cannot work. So you start a business. And
Yes.
a lot of the SMEs you mentioned, all these hawkers, all these shops, small mom and pop shops, they started like this. Is without choice that they started, and I think you are bridging the gap between them and like the government and also the society in general.
That's right. We have seen so many cases, right? Government just coming in and enforce certain regulations and bylaws, of the respective local councils. They may say, look, you don't have license to do this, you don't have license to do that. And then we realize a lot of people, it's not that they do not want to comply. It's just that to begin with, they're not even aware. Of course, not being aware is not an excuse in law. But many of these generally are not aware of certain bylaws that are made by politicians that may not even relate to them. They're simply occupying a space in front of their house or the shop, for example. And they could be fined severely for not, for example, applying for the permit to do so. So in my mind, I think there must be more that we can do to, like you said, to bridge the gap between what many of these SMEs need to do and what in reality they have the capability to do.
Like for example, one of the ones, because I'm in media and in digital marketing, one of the things that we saw recently was that the SMEs was not aware of is that you need to put your SSM registration on your social media.
Yeah.
And there were some SMEs will find a hefty sum.
Yes.
Hefty sum. So
Yes.
things like that.
And you're absolutely right. That's very common. And we have been trying to reach out to SSM and getting them to perhaps relook into this requirement. Because it's not just the online players. This is even true for many retailers and F&B operators, including, say, you own a small coffee shop and you print out these receipts using whatever POS you're doing. So assume that you forgot or you did not put in your SSM number in the receipt. You can be fined up to 50,000 for such offences. And I feel that is something that, not to say wrong, but there should be more levy to be done, given to the SMEs, including, of course, first educating them of the need to do so.
And today we are in April 2024, and we've been through the first quarter already. So what are the pressing issues today you're fighting for?
Oh, there are many issues that there continue to be issues for SMEs. Is by default. Of course, there's the upcoming minimum wage that we feel is going to be very difficult and very challenging for the SMEs. But currently, at this point in time, there's also the implementation of the e-invoicing. It's a lot faster than what we thought. Initially, we wanted it to be phased in up to 2017 or even 2018. But of course, the government has decided that we should have everyone comply with the new e-invoicing regime because of the interconnectivity of businesses and supply chain, latest by 2015. So it's a very short period of a very short window of preparation for many of our SMEs. So we're doing our best to ensure that our SMEs are aware of what is needed to be done and is doing the right thing so that they can comply with the new e-invoicing regime.
And it affects even me. I am now thinking of, okay, which supplier can comply, then I'll go for that supplier as well.
Yeah. The good thing is that the HDI has now released the SDK, the software development kit. So many of the regular accounting software suppliers that most SME users are already updating their software to enable the e-invoicing. So I'm hopeful that the transition will be a lot less painful than the transition that we had when we were trying to implement GST many years ago, because that was a very difficult transition for many SMEs. And of course, then the government decided to cancel it off and replace it SST, so another transition. I think by comparison, e-invoicing hopefully would be a smoother transition for the SMEs.
I think it would be difficult for certain industries. Like for me, I'm already digital, so all my transactions are digital. But I wonder how the small garage will be adapting to this. So it'll be quite challenging for them, I imagine.
I would think so as well. That's why we're doing all we can to try and educate as many SMEs as possible on how they go about doing it.
Yeah. And what else are affecting Malaysian businesses today? Of course, we have things like the low value of ringgit and things like that. What else are you concerned about?
I think these are still the bread and butter issue. What we think is the 3 Ps of challenges that Malaysian SMEs continue to face. The first one, of course, is people. We continue to have issue with workers. And we need to, of course, be able to distinguish what the SMEs want and what the SMEs really need moving forward. A lot of SMEs continue to want low-cost labor, but in reality, there's no such thing anymore. Whether it's foreign worker or local worker, there's no such thing as a low-cost worker anymore. So the issue then is how do we transition our SMEs to cut down on the reliance on workers and labor, and to rely instead on machineries, on automation, on digitalization, so that they don't continue to be in that trap of having to rely on workers, because the cost and the supply are going to constantly become more difficult. Then, of course, there's the issue of product, and this is very common. It's not something that we can help everybody, but we really want most of our SMEs to transition. Historically and traditionally in Malaysia, many of our SMEs do well by either importing products and reselling them, or we become part of a supply chain. So we manufacture for certain brands in the US, Europe, and so on. And we became quite successful in that. So Malaysia is well known at one point as a manufacturing hub within Southeast Asia and within Asia. And today we continue to play a very important role in supply chain of many industries, including, of course, and especially the E&E sector. But having said that, that is also where I feel our Achilles heels are, that we are over-reliant on being part of supply chain, that we're not putting enough effort in building our own brand. I remember 20, 30 years ago when I was a young entrepreneur, young man, I used to hear our former Minister of International Trade Industry, Dato, now Tan Sri Rafida Aziz, who would say that, look, you know what SMEs really need at that point was the transition from being an OEM, original equipment manufacturer, to being able to design, so ODM, and eventually own your own brand, an OBM, original brand manufacturer. And 30, 40 years down the road, the same thing that she called for continue to be an issue for many SMEs. We continue to be strong in manufacturing, in being OEM, but there are very few indigenous Malaysian brands that we can think of and name. Right? We are seeing that because obviously the cost continues to go up, and in order for us to become more productive, continue to make better profit, have stronger margin, would really be to transition from being just manufacturing parts and components for bigger brands to eventually owning some of these brands ourselves. Right? And I think that is a journey that many SMEs would need to start, because that will impact and continue to impact our margin and our ability to survive in this increasingly challenging market environment.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of the members of SAMENTA are in manufacturing, and like a good example of this is something like, so for the audience to understand, it's something like South Korea. They have their own brand like Samsung, LG, which then they can export besides manufacturing for other people as well.
Yeah, there's a perfect example, right? And if one day LG and Samsung, and they already done that, right, to expand their production base to countries like Mexico, to East Europe and so on, but they continue to control the bulk of the value add of the product that they produce, because they own the brand, they own the IP, they own the R&D, they own basically the entire brand.
Yeah, that is something very aspiring. I think, yes, we look forward to have more Malaysian brands out there. And I remember there are some like local Malaysian brands last time, and now like Panasonic, things like that. And what are the challenges like Malaysian brands have?
I think it's really the mindset and our ability to master this nexus between government and private business. What can we do to put all our resources together as corporate Malaysia or as business Malaysia to go out there and really push our Malaysian brand out there. We already have some of this, right? We have a very strong agency in the form of Matrade, who is of course pushing our products and our brand overseas. But in my mind, we are nowhere as a country and as a business and government nexus anywhere near, say, our neighbor down south, Singapore. I just came back from China. I was in Shanghai for a week and a half. So we led a trade mission there, and we came back. And I sat down with our Singaporean counterparts in China who are operating in Shanghai. And I realized that there are Singaporean companies like Keppel and Sembcorp, previously Sembawang, who are operating massive wastewater treatment, power generation plants in China that are producing 30-40% the annual capacity of what Singapore itself would need. And when I delve a bit deeper, I realized that a lot of that success are owed to a concerted effort by the Singaporean government, together, of course, with the industry, to ensure that these companies succeed in China, which is a very difficult market. And then I reflect and think about it and say, is there a similar business or Malaysian company that is just as successful in China? And I realize there's none. And yet we have the expertise, the technical know-how to do the things that Sembcorp and Keppel is doing. We've been doing wastewater treatment for decades. So there's really no reason why we cannot then export this expertise and invest in these infrastructure projects in countries like China, for example. So then what is missing? What do we need to do as a country to ensure that our brands continue to grow overseas? And I think besides changing the mindset of the SMEs and the manufacturers and the brand owners themselves, it's also how do we then move all the various government machinery in one path. I think that is what is needed to ensure that our business do well as well.
Okay, I hope, yes, we have a lot of ways to go, and we hope to see more Malaysian companies out there, making the difference and building their brands out there as well. So another question I would like to bring up is, we have had more than a year of the Madani government, and we have the Madani economy framework. So how does that impact SME so far?
I think, to be fair to this government, they do have the intention to try and uplift our SMEs. They do have. But whether or not they're doing the right thing to help the SMEs is something that is, of course, debatable. And I feel that it's a bit perhaps too early to see. I think at the heart of what the new government or the Madani government is trying to do is what they say, lifting the ceiling and lifting the floor, right? Ensuring that the best businesses continue to rise, and by so doing, it also helped the smaller businesses to go up as well. And it makes a lot of sense in theory, but whether or not it's being put in practice is something that we continue to debate on a day-to-day basis. But of course, there are new policies that are being introduced that we think are useful for SMEs in general. For example, we have the new industrial master plan. I think that is something that is good. At least it gives the right direction for businesses, not just SMEs, where the country is headed, where's the next phase of growth, and so on. But then there are also other issues that I feel the government can manage better. One, of course, is the issue of cost of doing business to SMEs. We've been cutting down a lot of red tapes to try and ensure that SMEs and businesses in general do not incur unnecessary costs. But at the same time, we're also introducing new taxes. Of course, we understand that these are
necessary, right?
Because of the financial situation of the country. But it hurts the SMEs quite badly because these taxes are being introduced concurrently at the same time. And of course, at a point when export is going down, when we are still recovering from COVID, the global supply chain situation is still very fragile. Our currency has struggled a fair bit, and then you introduce these new taxes. I think that is truly burdening the SMEs, regardless of the intention behind those new taxes. And of course, now we hear that the government may also be taking away the diesel subsidy. What that would mean for SMEs is the cost is going to go up even further. Your logistics cost is going to go up, and that will impact the entire supply chain, and it will again continue to hurt and shrink the SMEs margin. And I think that's quite difficult for most of us.
And yeah, you said the government frameworks, like you said, the NIMP, right, Industrial Master Plan. So things like that, for, like you said, lack of knowledge, and also there's a sort of, for us as SMEs, right, we don't really know how to take advantage or leverage on. And one of the things that you posted recently about is funding. So when it comes to, as an SME, also myself, I'm like, okay, there's a lot of these plans, and then there's a lot of announcement of fundings, but we don't know how to take advantage or even to access them, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think this is a perennial problem. This problem has existed for as long as I've been in business. So you end up having this pool of businesses who are a bit more savvy in knowing where the government support mechanisms are, not just grants, but other programs and initiatives by the government. And you end up having this same pool of people going after these different ministries and agencies, applying for various assistance and help. Whereas the real people who need the help, the bulk of the businesses out there, are either unaware of these programs, and there's no one to blame, right? You cannot say, oh, the government is not advertising or promoting it, because they are. And you cannot say that it is the fault of the businesses for not being aware of it, because there's a reality of how things work. But the reality is that the bulk of SMEs are not even aware of many of the programs that the government is doing. That's why we come in and try and bridge that. But even with SAMENTA coming in, with us doing workshops, roadshows, talks, seminars, podcasts like this, we're still not able to reach enough SMEs and get them to be aware of some of this help that they can be aware of. So one of the, I feel, low-hanging fruit the government can actually adopt is perhaps putting together all these assistance and help in one place. And I would think that the best agency to do this would be MOF, Ministry of Finance, perhaps. And it is not difficult, I think, to have some kind of a tool on the website to direct SMEs based on what they need to the various help that is out there offered by the various agencies and ministries. There's so many. But like you say, not many SMEs or businesses in general are even aware of a quarter of those. So we need to do something about that.
Yeah, and I think another thing before we started the recording that you talked about besides funding was the new minimum wage increment, right? So that's something also you are a bit, I would say, concerned about. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think if we don't voice out come 1st May, in all likelihood, the minister is going to announce a steep climb in minimum wage. Our argument is very simple. No SME and no employer in the country would want to pay their employee less than what they can afford or what the employee should get. In short, I think every company, including SMEs, would want to pay as much as they can afford. I think that goes without saying. And if you recall how the minimum wage came about, it was because at one point, some Malaysians, especially those perhaps in certain sectors like plantation and perhaps construction, were earning 600-700 ringgit a month. And at that point, of course, the government and the industry felt that that's not something that that is feasible because you can barely survive, or you essentially can't survive at that kind of rate, even then, back in 2010. But since then, our median wage has risen quite a fair bit. In 2010, we were at 1,005, the median wage of Malaysians. Today is 2,006, which is higher than the current minimum wage of 1,005. And if you go around, I mean, even yourself, Bob, I mean, you hire people as well. How many of our workers, at least here in Klang Valley, are being paid less than 1,005? I would say none, if there's any at all. I don't know of any of our members, for example, who are paying 1,005 minimum wage or the minimum wage to any workers. People are already being paid 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, depending on your job and where you are, of course. So who would really benefit from any increment in minimum wage? I would say it would not enough. You would argue that I don't think it is Malaysians, because our minimum wage is already far higher than the minimum wage. I think people who really will benefit from any increment minimum wage are the foreign workers. And that's not what we want to do. Because the whole idea of minimum wage is to help this group of Malaysians who are socially immobile, meaning that in the same jobs, and they will be in the same job for the next 20, 30, 40 years until they retire. So the idea is that if these people cannot, because of lack of skill, because of lack of opportunity, because of the sector, the industry they're in, the locality and the geography that they're in, are unable to have a higher wage naturally and market-driven in a sense, then the government should step in and enforce that minimum wage so that this lowest wage earner in the country can have a high wage. That was the initial idea. But we argue that as you continue to increase the minimum wage, given today's reality, now we are operating in a gig economy, post-COVID, businesses is ultra slim margin today compared to before 2019, and the market being so fluid today because of, again, the gig economy and so on. When you mandate a higher minimum wage, the very people that you're hoping to help, the lowest wage earner, are going to be the first to feel the full impact negatively of any wage increment. Because what it would mean is that an employer, because of the low margin, will not be able to absorb fully whatever increment that you are calling for. So what it would mean that if an employer is hiring 10 people, they will now have to cut down the jobs from 10 to 8. So when people leave, or they might possibly push out certain people so that they can have less headcount. And whose headcount are being cut off? These are most likely to be the unskilled workers that can be replaced by machinery, that can be replaced by digitalization, that can be replaced by automation. And these are the very people that the minimum wage are supposed to help, right? So we are against it for that reason. We do not believe that minimum wage continue to be relevant in today's age. We think that businesses are already paying as much as they can. Malaysia's job market is a very dynamic, very efficient market, meaning that if you underpay somebody, your competitor, your neighbor will snatch the person up.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't really need a minimum wage in that sense. So I think the government should not do this just for the sake of optics. Just because you have got unions saying that, look, we need higher wages. How many members of these unions to begin with are earning below 1,500 today? They can't because there's minimum wage, right? How many of them are earning below 2,000 or below the 1,750 that is that many of these unions are being lobbied? Very few. So why are they lobbying for the sake of lobbying, right? So, and the other point that we want to make and continue to want to make is that wages should be tied to productivity. It should not be tied to just, in this case, a blanket floor amount in a form of minimum wage. So if productivity rises, then wages would, even without government intervention, naturally rises, because then demand for certain skilled workers will increases, and the employers be forced to pay more to have these workers.
Wow, that is a huge impact indeed. And I imagine can affect all the SMEs out there?
It's got a cascading
Blanket, yeah.
cascading effect. People say, why are you so worried about minimum wages? Your staff, if you say that your staff is already being paid more than 2,000 ringgit, 3,000 ringgit, why do you care whether the minimum wage is from 1,005 to 2,000 or 1,008 or 1,750? It doesn't matter. It does, because it's got a cascading effect. Because your supervisor, your manager will say, look, now that the cleaner is getting 1,008, we are the operator, we should be getting 2,005. If I'm supervisor, I should be getting 4,000. If I'm engineer, I should be getting 6,000, and so on and so forth, which is all good, provided that businesses can absorb this growth in wages overall, meaning that the margin has to be strong, business economy has to be doing very well, productivity has to increase in tandem. So in the absence of these three elements, I think any increment in minimum wages, even 50 ringgit, will hurt the industry quite badly.
Yeah. I was just watching this on social media, like in the US, minimum wage is high. So what happened was the convenience stores the cashiers are on Zoom and in Philippines. So I imagine if it goes up too high, something might happen like this, because of course you said digitalization and cashless payments, everything like this. So eventually, to save costs, we don't want the minimum wage stuff.
So they end up with a record unemployment numbers.
Yeah.
And again, when you have record unemployment numbers, you blame everybody except yourself, who of course came up with that minimum wage to begin with. Right. So our call is still don't do it.
Right. So thank you, William, for coming. So last question I will give to you. So a lot of my audience are on LinkedIn. So as of today, I have 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And what is your advice to the SMEs who are watching this, or the business owners on LinkedIn? What is your advice in this business economic climate?
I always think that any businesses, for you to grow, and of course we ourselves have grown from zero to being IPO'd and so on. I always believe that with any businesses, you still have to take care of your basics. So you have to jaga your own basics. So what are these basics? This would be your people, your products, and your processes. So if you get these three things right, ensuring that your products are in demand to begin with. There's a lot of products and services out there that are essentially just hype. You should look beyond that and look at exactly what you're delivering, what value you're adding. So your product has to be strong. You ensure that you build a strong team behind you. And of course, ensure that your processes are efficient, lean, and essentially self-running. So when you do all these three things, I think you can be in any business and you should doing quite well.
All right, thanks, William. So before we go, I'd like to shout out the venue sponsor. So we are today, William has been here, he told me. Yeah. So we are at Iconic Co-working. They let us use the space to record our podcast. So they are a supporter of a lot of the local SMEs as well. And you can do trainings. There's the training set up here for tomorrow's event. You can work here as an SME. You can set up your office here. And of course, you can do all your events here as well. So thank you, Iconic Co-working. Thank you, William, again for coming on today.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
Right. Thank you.